Thanks for tuning in to our virtual tour today. I'm Christina, and this is Cassidy. We are here at the Missouri Botanical Garden, where we are just on the cusp of fall color, as you can see around us here in the Bottlebrush Buckeye. Some of it is already nearing the peak of its show. A lot of it hasn't even started yet, so we're kind of in the midst of that season right now, and we wanted to give you a tour to show you kind of where everything is at. So we will get this tour started. So as I mentioned, this is the Bottlebrush Buckeye that we are walking through right now. You can see that it is still turning. Not all the leaves are yellow, but overall it's looking really, really great.
And you can definitely hear the sounds of fall too, the rustling of those leaves as they dry out. It's a really windy day. We just had some storms go through last night, so some of these leaves that have already kind of gone past have been knocked to the ground. And up above the Bottlebrush path that we're on, you can see here, these are a couple of hickories that are also showing off some really bright yellow color. They're getting pretty close to peak and should be peaking within the next week or so. But those, and we'll see them as we kind of exit the Bottlebrush path and kind of look backwards. Those are on the knolls, sort of the grassy area just south of the climatron. And they have really pretty fall color, and because there's two of them, or maybe even three of them right next to each other with the yellow of the Bottlebrush as well, this is a really beautiful place for sort of the first wave of fall color, and we can actually get pretty close up on the leaves here. It's a hybrid hickory called Carex Laney Eye, and you can see, so this is one leaf of that hickory, and you can see it's mostly yellow. It's still got some green there along the veins within these leaflets, and even on the tree just behind us, some of those lower branches are all pretty much still green, but the change is coming. And you can see it in little bits and pieces across the knolls from us here. I think that's some sort of linden directly across from us, and it's kind of getting speckled in yellow. So lots of yellows at the garden, especially right now. It's the dominant color that we're seeing as far as fall color. Yeah, lots of trees that will be yellow too. River birch, this is a river birch right over the top of us. It's not really changing yet, but it gets nice yellow color. And then over here is a tulip poplar, a tulip tree, and that also, those leaves will turn a nice yellow color before they fall as well. So lots of yellow. And if we kind of head to the left a little bit here, we'll get a nice view looking back at those hickories. And you can see the yellow really prominent on those upper parts of the canopy, and then you get that yellow down below in the Bottlebrush as well. So this is a really Really pretty place to see some fall color right now in the garden. There's some more yellow on the Amur cork tree here. That's starting to change colors a little bit. Yeah, it's sort of subtle. I mean, yellow is on the spectrum not as far off from green as say orange or red would be. So that change over to yellow can be a little subtle, even though it's taking place all over.
Here's a tree that looks like it's pretty much completely changed color and is even dropping its leaves right now. And this is a yellow buckeye.
Yeah, so it's related to the Bottlebrush Buckeye that we just walked through, and also the Ohio Buckeye that a lot of people might know, and red buckeye, which is a really popular home landscaping plant. Has these really neat leaves. I can't quite reach them. They're too high on the tree, but they're similar to the hickory, where you have a big leaf with lots of little leaflets. Buckeyes have leaves that look kind of like hands a little bit. So that's one leaf with the 5 leaflets. And you can see, so each one of these tends to fall off individually, and you might see this and think this is just the leaf, but no, it's that whole structure coming from that stem that is the whole leaf for the buckeye.
And you can also see around us here some sassafras. It's getting an early sort of that reddish shade like Cassidy was talking about. It pops a little more obviously than the yellow in the landscape. And there's quite a bit of that sassafras in this garden here.
Yeah, from what we know, the sassafras here actually dates back pre-garden. This grove is all sending up new individual trees from a root system that has been here for more than 160 years. One of the neat things about sassafras, I've got here, all three of these are sassafras leaves, and you can see they have all this this variation in the shape. I think that's called polymorphous. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one of the kind of neat traits with sassafras, and mulberry is another one where the leaves don't necessarily all look the same. So you have this one that kind of looks like a dinosaur footprint maybe. Then you have this one is a mitten, and sometimes the thumb's on this side and sometimes the thumb's on the other side. And then you have this, which is more sort of standard leaf shape, I guess, that most people would think of when they think of a leaf. But all three of these from the same species, and potentially even from the same tree, but there's so many sassafras around here, it'd be hard to pinpoint exactly which tree they came from. But there's more than a dozen little sassafras saplings on this in this path. 2 dozen probably, now that I'm looking at it.
Yeah, and you can see all that red that we're seeing in our view right now as we walk is sassafras, the trees.
And that lower level of red, Christina, you were pointing this out to me earlier, is all this sumac that's growing here around the outside of the mausoleum garden, which is what we're walking through right now.
Yeah, we should definitely stop by that sumac. It's really bright red. And that's something that you'll see a lot of at Shaw Nature Reserve, actually, is sumac. This is a great time of year to visit that location. And in fact, being a little ways outside the urban heat bubble, Shaw Nature Reserve is usually a little ways ahead of the garden in fall color, and might already be quite brilliant compared to just the start that we're seeing here at the garden. So it's a great time to venture out there and go for a hike or enjoy some time at the nature reserve.
Yeah, this is a really great vantage point here with now that we're out from underneath the sassafras and it kind of builds up. I mean, this is sort of what we were seeing with the bottlebrush and the hickory, where you have that low color here provided by the fragrant sumac, and then that sort of drawing your eye upwards with the sassafras. And then you can actually start to make out some color changes in the leaves of the oak trees that are really providing the upper part of that canopy. As we were walking, I found a little branch of oak leaves where the leaves had changed color and were probably knocked off by the storms last night. But you can see the red on there as well. So another one of those vantage points where you're really seeing that color palette kind of carried upwards in your field of view.
And even from down here, you can see a few spots on the tree where it's changing. It's a little bit backlit on our phone camera, but you might be able to make that out. And you can see on our left here just another sign of the changing seasons. The last time we had one of these virtual tours, we walked through this garden and it was full still of its summer annuals, which have since been removed. And probably soon they'll be planting bulbs in there. There's usually a beautiful tulip display here in spring. It's possible those have already been planted even. So the seasons are always changing.
And one of the things, we're showing you what is changing right now here in the garden, but in your own neighborhood, you're probably noticing some change in the trees that you have maybe lining the streets. So maples are something that are really starting to come into that peak fall color. There's also ash trees are changing, and depending on the species, that's another one that can either be bright yellow or can have some really cool deeper red tones to it.
Locust trees.
Yeah, the honey locusts are changing. Those are really bright yellow. Christina, you were talking about the changing of the seasons, and I feel like we would be remiss not to talk about the winter season, the holiday season that's coming up, and we're getting reminders of that as we walk past. This is a new installation that's part of Garden Glow, which opens in a few weeks.
November 13th.
Yeah, and so our staff is putting the finishing touches on that, and there's I've seen a lot of things on my walks through the garden in the last few weeks that I haven't seen before at Glow. So there's going to be lots of new installations to see. Definitely want to come and check that out. So we just passed under. It'll probably be backlit again. That's going to be a problem for us as we walk through. We just passed underneath this big pumpkin ash. And so green still here at the bottom, but you can start to see some of that color coming in at the top. If it doesn't pick up very well on our camera, then that's just more incentive for you to come and see it in person if you're able, because that's one where you see that color starting to change, and it is probably another week or two before we're at peak and then out past peak. I mean, once these leaves have triggered to start changing, there's really not a whole lot of time between when they start to change and when they'll be gone from the tree entirely. And a lot of that is up to weather. The strong winds that we're having now will do their fair share of knocking leaves off, and especially once they have moved a little bit farther along in their seasonal change, they'll be real easy to knock off.
But you can see now, as we're entering the English woodland garden, there are still a lot of trees that are pretty much green still. You can tell they're a little bit lighter in color. They're not quite that lush, deep green of summertime, but in this area, this is an example of some trees that are going to be later changers. And we're coming up right now on a grove of ginkgo trees, which this area is always a favorite because ginkgos turn that really beautiful golden kind of buttery yellow, and a lot of times they'll drop all their leaves all at once. So if you come here on the right day, you'll just get to see this beautiful snowfall of yellow leaves, and this area is really, really striking. But as you can see right now, we're still a ways out from that. Now I can tell that some of the tips of these ginkgo leaves are just starting to get tinged yellow. And I don't think that will pick up on the camera, but there's hints everywhere, even in the later changing trees, that peak color is coming in the coming weeks for sure. And speaking of later changing trees, some of these Japanese maples, some Japanese maples have color year-round, but others are later changers as well. So actually the Japanese garden, though it doesn't look super autumnal at the moment compared to some of those other areas we just showed you, it's a great spot to be later in fall. Like in mid-November or so, the Japanese garden will often be one of the last areas that looks really, really colorful.
Yeah, and because we feature by nature of being a botanical garden, we feature plants from all over the world, and so they're not necessarily as in tune as our native trees would be in a more natural setting like Shaw Nature Reserve. And so we have things that our season is a little bit different here than it's going to be in some of the other places around the St. Louis area that you might go looking for fall color. And part of that is because we have other plants that you wouldn't find in those landscapes that are changing. We have some really pretty bright red here on some of these shrubs. You can see some real bright colors coming in from some of those Japanese maples across the way. That's some really nice color in those dogwoods too. I think we might have featured those on the last tour as well. Those are definitely one. That's a native that's going to be getting close to past peak here in the next week. So most of the dogwoods you should be seeing that color change. I'd say those dogwoods are at peak. But a lot still to change down here. And really it's just, you get these neat little pops of color, and that's kind of the fun, I think, of coming out and visiting at this time of year, is you may see something that catches your eye in the distance, and then you can kind of take your journey around the garden and make your way to that that plant that's got really showy color, and learn a little bit more about what it is. I can see another ash across the way that's showing some really good color.
So we will certainly be back in this Japanese garden in a couple weeks to give you a tour when the fall color is at its peak. For today, we just wanted to give you a taste of those things that are starting to change and encourage you to come out sometime this week, because as Cassidy said a couple minutes ago, once those leaves start changing, they go quickly. So plan your visit for this coming weekend. It'll probably be even more colorful than it is today. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next time.